Raider Nation. Thank you for joining us on the Only Nation podcast, brought to you by the Raider Ramble and sponsored by Chucky's Thugs. My name is Heidi, but you may know me as Kevlar Prom Dress or even Raider Ladybug. I'm here with T3 Raider Facts, and we're ready to talk some Raiders football together.
Well, Heidi, we've come to the end of the road for the 2021 season. We're going to reflect on the game, and then we'll move on.
Sounds good. Today on the show, we'll talk about the playoff game against Cincinnati. We'll talk about the highs and lows of the season, and then we'll start making projections about what the Raiders should do next.
Okay, Raider Nation, we have a big jersey giveaway coming up. You've got 2 more weeks to register. Here's how. Give us a call on the Only Nation podcast voicemail line at 904-701-8667. That's 904-701-8667. Make sure you leave both your name and phone number. You can also check us out on the web at onlynationpod.com.
Yeah, you can enter just by sending us a message on Twitter or Instagram or any of those ways as well.
Here's the latest Raider news.
The Raiders fought valiantly in the cold in Cincinnati, but came up just short as the Bengals won the game 26-19 at Paul Brown Stadium. The Raider offense had a chance to tie the game at the end of regulation, but a 4th down pass was intercepted near the goal line to bring the drive to an end.
You know, I really thought when Derek Carr got the ball back at the end of the game that they really were going to march down the field and tie the game up. He has some of that late game magic, and it's worked a lot during the season. I really thought that it might be able to work again. But as you and I talked off air, I had a really bad feeling when the Raiders marched down on that first drive and took a 3-0 lead instead of a 7-0 lead, and then just got into the habit of having to play catch-up ball for the rest of the game.
Yeah, I was pretty confident when the Raiders got the ball back with enough time to come back and score and tie the game. But you know what? It just didn't happen this time. And you can't always win on the last play of the game. It finally caught up to the Raiders. Derek Carr completed 29 passes for 310 yards and a touchdown, but he only had a passer rating of 69.2, which included the interception at the very end of the game. And of course, there was the crucial strip sack, which Cincinnati recovered and turned into points.
You know, there were a lot of throws that Derek missed. There were a couple of drop balls, but he missed out on a few receivers on this game. There were a couple of bad decisions where balls were forced in. I think Darren Waller, toward the very end of the game, I think maybe they should have gone his way rather than trying to force the ball into Zay Jones in the end. The other thing that I had an issue with is on 3rd and short or even 3rd and middle, there were a lot of passes that did not even make the line to gain. And it seemed as if Cincinnati was willing to give up the 2- and 3-yard pass routes, knowing that they could cover and tackle before they reached that line to gain. And that happened too often, I think, during the course of the game.
Yeah, and that has been a trait of the Raiders throughout the entire 2021 season, was to complete the ball before the line to gain and then just not being able to make the first down. And once again, that caught up with them.
I heard this on one of the other podcasts. In fact, Q mentioned this, that the Raiders were in the habit of getting the balls to receivers before the line to gain, anticipating or hoping that they would make a move or make some type of play to pick up the first down. But once again, those things can't happen. In an offense that continues to move the ball forward, you have to get the ball out quick and generate positive 7, 8, 9 yards. And definitely on 3rd downs, you've got to get the receiver beyond that line to gain in order to make that happen. If you get a pass interference penalty, that's great, but you've got to proactively make it happen.
Yeah, and that's just something that the Raiders haven't done the entire year, and it caught up with them. Darren Waller, Zay Jones, and Hunter Renfrow led the way with receptions for the Raiders, while Josh Jacobs picked up 83 yards on 13 carries and also gathered in 4 receptions for an additional 44 yards.
You know, I got to hand it to Josh Jacobs again. He had a really good game, and he seemed to be getting stronger as the game was going along. And I was really surprised they didn't go to him more toward the end of the game, because he really did seem to be getting stronger. Hunter Renfro, I think Cincinnati finally figured him out. He was making some early catches and he was getting good separation on routes, but they closed in on him pretty quick. Zay Jones had a couple of receptions, but Derek Carr seemed to try to force the ball to Zay a little bit too much, and that resulted in some incompletions. I got to give him a pass on that interception toward the end because it was either make or break at that point. And Darren Waller, I just don't think that, aside from a couple of catches, even though Darren Waller did have 8 catches on the day, I don't think he and Derek were nearly as in sync as I would have liked to have seen.
Yeah, I was also kind of disappointed that they went away from Josh Jacobs, especially when he was making progress on the ground and even in the air. It was like they had this resource that they just didn't tap into. I mean, he only had 13 carries, and he was moving the ball really well.
He was getting big chunks of yards, too.
He really was. Max Crosby and Quentin Jefferson each had sacks for the Raiders, who ended up with 5 total tackles for losses. Denzel Perriman had 9 tackles, 6 solo, and both Divine Diablo and Nate Hobbs had 8 tackles apiece. The Raiders, however, did not have an answer for Bengals star rookie wideout Jamar Chase, who caught 9 passes for 116 yards and also carried the ball 3 times for 23 yards.
Yeah, I think he really proved himself as Rookie of the Year. Not much more I can say. Burrow and Chase played with each other in college, and we knew that Chase was going to be his main target. The Raiders, I think, could have done a better job shutting him down. Now, of course, he went to his tight end as well, who had a big game. But the Raiders did only give up 3 points in the third quarter and 3 points in the fourth quarter. So it seemed like the defense overall was starting to figure it out and play a lot more stable and a lot tougher as the game went along, much like we just mentioned Josh Jacobs was playing better as the game went along. So I think this Raiders team was getting stronger, not weaker.
Yeah, I think the Raiders team was getting stronger overall, and the defense was actually towing the line. It was just the offense. You know, for some reason, they weren't completing the balls to the line to gain. They weren't feeding Josh Jacobs. It was kind of like, you know, we know these things are working, but they went away from them for some reason.
Yeah, they did. And I think I'm not sure if some of it was panic or the cold. I'm not exactly sure what it was, but it seemed like once they had something going, rather than sticking with it, they just abandoned it.
Exactly. All right, let's talk about some key points of the game. The Raiders were behind almost the entire game, but they had their chances. All right, first, let's just go ahead and get it out of the way. The blown call. The inadvertent whistle by referee Jerome Boger. NFL Senior Vice President Walt Anderson said after the game that Boger and his crew did not feel that the whistle was blown before the receiver caught the ball. But by rule, when an inadvertent whistle is blown during a play, it is automatically ruled dead and the down is replayed. Now, beyond that play, the Raiders did have other chances to win.
Now, I will make this one statement about the play. Inadvertent whistle means that the play is instantly blown dead and stops. Okay, referees, listening to me now, if you called it back in 1977 in the AFC Championship game between Denver and the Raiders, which the Raiders lost and should not have, why did you not make the same call this time?
Yes, but as we always know that the Raiders are picked on, and whatever the officials can do to screw the Raiders, they will do so. Okay, and I will confess that I might have just sounded like a bitter Raiders fan. But
we're always
I think
bitter, though.
I think I've deserved that bitterness after this game.
Mm-hmm. Well, I'll tell you, whistle or no whistle, the guys on that back end cannot give up on the play. Trayvon Merrick was just staring at Tyler Boyd as he caught the ball in the end zone. Players are taught to play all the way through the play, but as soon as that whistle was blown, it should have immediately stopped play. Now, overall, I think it speaks volumes for the fact that Boger and his officiating crew will not be calling any more playoff games for the rest of this season anyway. But a field goal instead of a touchdown there could have been huge toward the eventual outcome of the game.
Yeah, and that field goal could have been all the difference in the game because the Bengals did not score a touchdown later on in the game. They only scored field goals.
Yeah, that was the last touchdown they scored.
Yeah. All right, let's talk about some of the play calling. The Raiders ended up with 5 more first downs than the Bengals, but the Silver and Black was only 8 for 18 on third down conversions and 1 of 2 on fourth downs. And Foster Moreau didn't have a single catch all day.
And Foster did have a couple of targets, and I will admit this. He is not a good blocker, and I blame the offensive scheme for putting him in position to go one-on-one against the Bengals' best pass rusher, which resulted in that strip sack. But you've got to get him into the game, catching a pass or two. That just opens things up more for Waller. Now, on some of the third down plays, as we mentioned, the receivers just needed to get better separation, and Derek needed to get rid of the ball a little bit quicker. But some of those throws were off target and some were forced. There was one third down where everyone in the stadium knew they were going for Renfro, and he caught it, but he had 4 guys on him just as soon as he got it. He was nowhere close to the first down.
Yeah, the same problem that we have been talking about the entire episode. Now, Josh Jacobs, he had a really good day, and he seemed to be getting stronger as the game went along. Maybe the Raiders could have turned to him a little bit more during the second half.
Yeah, Josh Jacobs has earned himself a nice payday with the Raiders for the work he's done over the past couple of weeks. Now, I still think the fifth-year option is too much money, but I could certainly see the Raiders working out something for Josh. He's an important part of this team and one of the leaders. I sure would have liked to have seen him score a touchdown during this game.
It would have been nice, but there were a lot of mistakes made during the game. The Peyton Barber gaffe on the kickoff return was huge.
That was huge.
Penalties, especially in the red zone, were huge. And the Raiders continued to suffer with that season-long problem of getting field goals instead of touchdowns.
Well, the one week I jumped all in on the Raiders, you just knew they would come up short. And we talked about that off air as well. This team does not play well from behind. And even though they were able to keep it close, they just had too many wasted opportunities. Now, I don't mean to pick on these 2 guys in particular, but I think we can all see that there's a reason why Trufant and Faison were not on anybody's opening day rosters. Jamar Chase just owned both of these guys all day.
Yeah, that was kind of disappointing to see. Trufant and Faison, they have had good seasons for the Raiders, but yeah, they aren't starting caliber cornerbacks. They would be great as rotational players and in relief, but they aren't the guys that really should be out there at the kickoff, opening day, ready to lead the team. They did okay with what they did, but they really struggled this game, and their deficits really showed.
I think this truly showed why we really need help at that cornerback position going forward.
Yeah. All right, let's talk about the highs and lows of the season. We'll each take one, and then we'll just talk it through. How about you, T3?
Well, the high point, obviously for me, was the win against the Chargers last week, completing a 4-game win streak. Week to week, we kept saying, or I kept saying rather, that they weren't going to win, and they kept proving me wrong. And I was happy to be wrong each and every time. But I think the win against the Chargers in front of the home fans, in front of a packed stadium, divisional rival, knocking the Chargers out of the playoffs, and really helping everybody within Raider Nation and that building celebrate a return to the playoffs. That, for me, definitely was a high point of the season. And I'll just mention the low point as well, as many people would probably have on their radar as well. The whole Ruggs tragedy that took the life of Tina Tintor, and we really need to continue to mention her name and remember her family, because that's one part of this tragedy that is forever imprinted, and that's something, a family member that will never be returned. And that was followed closely by Damon Arnett's complete lapse of judgment. That was a horrible week for the Raiders on so many different levels. So we went from the highs and the lows, and of course, As a lot of talking heads on ESPN and NFL Network have mentioned, this would make a hell of a 30 for 30 series.
Definitely. The entire season would make a great biopic, a 430 for 30. For me, I would say the high would also be the Chargers game. But I don't want to sound like I'm completely copying everything that you have to say. So I will pick a high point as in the two games after John Gruden left the team. The Raiders really pulled it together, and in spite of all the adversity they faced with losing their head coach of going on 4 years, they pulled it together and they won 2 games immediately after him leaving. And the low point, I would have to say, would also be Ruggs. You've stolen all of the good answers. But to give a different answer, I would say John Gruden and the emails and him leaving the team. That also was an incredible low point. And the only reason I wouldn't put that as the first low point is because with Ruggs, he did take the life of Tina Tintor and her dog Max. And I don't think that can compete with just losing a coach. But to be different, I would say the high point would be the victories after Gruden left, and I would say the low point is when Gruden left.
I agree with you there. And I have to add an angry point as well. My angry point of the season is the fact that Gruden has taken the fall for this whole Washington football team scandal. There's been no more mention of it. I know that they're getting ready to release the new name for the Washington football team, and everybody is trying to sweep everything under the rug and say that there was no other damage done. I disagree with that. I think that the NFL is being very closed-minded on this, and they're not being open to their fans, and they're just trying to pretend like nothing happened, and Gruden's taking the fall for everything. That makes me angry.
Oh, yeah, definitely. And I've said before that Gruden was not writing these emails into a vacuum. He was writing them to people who were either agreeing with what he was saying or at least being receptive to what he was saying. These were not people that were sending each other, recipes and their favorite scripture verses. These were emails that were written to an audience that was receptive to hearing it. And for the NFL to completely ignore that it's infuriating because there definitely are more people involved in this. The NFL is just sweeping it under the rug, pretending that it was only Gruden. I mean, what does that say about a controversy where the only collateral damage is the coach of another team?
Right.
Come on, NFL. You're better than that. Well, actually, maybe not. Maybe the NFL isn't better than this. But to let them get away with it is a little infuriating for me.
I think the NFL is just afraid about what's going to come out.
I think that's exactly it. And I think that just my personal opinion here is that I think that whatever could come out could possibly destroy the NFL. And that's why they are sweeping it under the rug and refusing to talk about it.
Got to protect that money.
That's right. All right, T3, why don't you give us your top 3 for the week?
T3's top 3.
Okay, here is this week's top 3. All right, now I know it's really early to start talking draft, but there are 2 names I want to mention. The first is defensive tackle Trayvon Walker from the NCAA champion Georgia Bulldogs. He's 6'5", 275. He's an explosive, versatile playmaker who can line up at multiple spots along that front. He might be there toward the end of round 1. The other guy is LSU linebacker Damone Clark. If Walker's off the board, then Clark could be the next in that line of big and fast LSU linebackers, much like Patrick Queen from last year's draft. Number 2, okay, now here is the difficult conversation. Greg Olsen, in my opinion, is done. I think the top brass needs to sit down with Derek Carr and assess what the next 2 years are going to look like. because regardless of whether Derek stays on one more year or 2 more years, I think that's the max. The Raiders need to bring in a young quarterback either via the draft or free agency, and that may have to wait until after the head coaching position and offensive coordinator spots are filled. No rush on either one of those things just yet. And number 3, now I'm going to address the Jim Harbaugh elephant in the room. First, I don't think he's leaving Michigan. Second, I think if he goes to the NFL, he may be headed for the Bears instead of to the Raiders. And third, there's been a ton of hype surrounding his name. He's been a winner, but I think he's a little too much of a lightning rod, much like Gruden was. I'm not saying I wouldn't like to see him as a coach in Vegas, but I think there are too many other needs on this team to warrant making such a huge splash at the head coaching position. I think that once the GM question is settled, the decision on the coach should be a careful one, and it should be made with an eye on the long term. And that is this week's top 3.
I think that a top-rated defensive tackle would be the perfect pickup for the Raiders. If not, I do like the idea of a linebacker like Patrick Queen. Patrick Queen has just been lights out, and if we could get a linebacker like him, I would be all in for it. But I believe the first issue that needs to be addressed is defensive tackle. We still have been pretty weak in that area. It has been a little bit improved this past season, and you can see the difference in the team and in the defense when there was an improvement in that position. So those two, I think, are great starting points to look at as far as draft choices go. And the difficult conversation with Greg Olsen. Yeah, he definitely was a weak point in the Raiders' battle plan. After Gruden left, Greg Olsen took over. And I know that there were some games where Tom Cable did a lot of the play calling, and those games, there was a big difference. And Greg Olsen, he just does not have it. There's a reason why he's his age and he has been in the NFL for so long, and he's not currently a head coach. He just does not have it. Get rid of him, as far as I'm concerned. That is one position where the Raiders could really improve, especially if, for some reason, Rich Bisaccia remains the head coach. I would actually, I'm still a little back and forth on that. But if Rich Bisaccia does remain as head coach, he definitely needs a different offensive coordinator. And I think that is just very obvious and not a question at all about it. Jim Harbaugh is actually the coach that I wanted when Gruden was hired. I would love to see him, but I also don't think that he's leaving Michigan. I think he's staying put. And if he does end up in the NFL, I could see him at the Bears. But I do think that he will not be leaving Michigan. So I don't think that it's going to be a question one way or the other.
Especially since the fact that they finally beat Ohio State. I think he can probably do anything he wants up in Michigan now.
Yeah, and he can get a big fat contract too. Give us a call at 904-701-8667. Leave a voicemail or text message at that number, or send in a message via social media and we'll share your thoughts. Also, be sure to give us your contact information so we can enter you into the drawing for the free custom Raiders jersey.
We will look forward to getting your information because we want to give that jersey away.
Oh, yes, we do. And there's still plenty of room for a really good chance for you to win. All right, what's going on with Raider Roots this week, T3?
Okay, I'm just going to add to your depression here. This week, we're going to look at the year 1981. It's a Super Bowl hangover for the Raiders as they don't make the playoffs. But there was a special player put into the Hall of Fame and another future Hall of Famer picked up during that draft. It's all a part of 1981.
All right, sounds good. And then next week, we will be addressing some of Soren's questions about the older draft classes, and we will be answering questions about 2018, 17, and so forth. So listen in. We'll be addressing that for you guys next week.
Yeah, we're going to be looking at the coaches. We're going to be looking at the players from the drafts, people that we have on the roster, our wish lists for free agents, and we'll start putting together our draft list as well. So we have a lot coming up during the off season here.
Oh, yeah, we will keep you guys interested. All right, T3, how about we find out what we do or don't know?
All right, it's time for another edition of Did You Know? In this segment, I will ask Heidi and our entire listening audience a Raiders-related question with 3 multiple-choice answers to choose from, so just give it your best guess. Here's this week's question. Heidi, I think you're going to get this one right. All right, now training camps for the Raiders were in Napa, California, beginning in 1996 after the team had moved back from Los Angeles. That was before the team moved to Vegas. But prior to Napa, where did the team hold its training camps, starting in 1985 and going all the way to the year the team returned to Oakland from Los Angeles? Was it A, Santa Barbara, California, B, Oxnard, California, or C, Long Beach, California? Where were the training camps?
This is a little before my time, dude. I'm not as old as you.
That's true. That's true.
For some reason, Oxnard, California sounds right, so I'm just going to go with B, Oxnard, California.
Oxnard is absolutely correct. Beautiful spot, too. So they were there from 1996 until they first started going to Napa. So there you go. Actually, let me rephrase that. They were there from 1985 until 1996. And then 96 is when they started going to Napa.
Okay.
So there you go.
All right.
You were correct.
You
got the right answer.
It just sounded right. I don't know what it was.
All right. So right now, this is a special time because it's time for Heidi's Heroes.
Flying away on a wing and a prayer. Who could it be?
This week's hero is a special dude, and it's really the only one that could be chosen the culmination of this Raiders season. My hero is interim head coach Rich Bisaccia. He is a gentleman that has been a coach for decades, and he's always been a special teams head coach, assistant head coach. You know, he's never been the head coach, the guy in charge. But when John Gruden removed himself from being head coach for the Raiders, Rich Bisaccia was chosen to be the interim head coach. And he has, he's been with the team, and he got them through some really tough times. He started off with a couple of wins right off the bat. And then, the horrible tragedy happened with Henry Ruggs and Tina Tintor. Which really, it wiped out the team for a while. It was a lot for the team to deal with, but he led them. He led the team through the tragedy and helped them get things processed in their minds to where they could return to concentrating on the field. In the regular season, he ended up with a 7-5 record. Postseason, yeah. Only one game, and the Raiders did lose that game. But his career head coaching record is 7-6, which for an interim head coach taking over a team at the point where he did, I think is pretty incredible. He led the team 4 straight wins at the end of the year to get them into the playoffs, which is one thing that a lot of people had given up on the Raiders. I had given up on the idea of them being able to make the playoffs. I think a lot of people had given up on them being able to make the playoffs. And Rich Bisaccia led the team to those victories and got them into the playoffs, which I think pretty much seals the deal for him. He is the Heidi's hero for this week. There's just nobody else that could have been it. So, Rich Bisaccia, you did a great job. You led the team. You held it together. You got them into the playoffs when nobody else expected them to be able to make it. And you are the Heidi's hero this week.
Excellent selection, and kind of reminiscent of when Art Shell came in as an interim head coach. And then, of course, he got restored and became full-time head coach back in 1989 when he took over for He Who Shall Not Be Named, and then led the Raiders to a 7-5 record. The team really rallied behind him and was playing well throughout the rest of the season. By and large, I think the team did the same thing. Of course, this time they played well at the end of the season, whereas in years past they've melted down. Now,
Right.
I'm going to give you an additional did you know, which you probably didn't know, and this caught me by surprise until I was doing some research on it. Rich Bisaccia went to the same college as a former Raider. The college that he came from is Yankton College in New York. And if you are or not familiar with it, that is the college of former Raider Lyle Alzado.
That is very interesting. My little piece of trivia on Rich Bisaccia is that he has been the only interim head coach in NFL history to bring the team that they took over mid-season to the playoffs in the Super Bowl era. I believe the last time that a team that an interim coach took them to the playoffs was like 60 years ago or so. It has not been in the Super Bowl era. Rich Bisaccia is the only interim head coach to bring the team to the playoffs in the Super Bowl era. And Art Shell did come very close, but Rich Bisaccia is the first coach that did it.
I am so happy that he had an opportunity to be a head coach, not under the best of circumstances, but he took it and ran with it. All of Raider Nation was behind him. All of Raider Nation loves him, and the players do as well. Whether he becomes the head coach going forward or not, I don't think that diminishes at all the job that he's done or the esteem that he's held in the eyes of the entire Raider Nation.
That's for sure. And that about does it for this week on the Only Nation podcast. If you'd like to help support the show, you can send in a donation at paypal.me/onlynationpod. You can find me, Heidi Stabbert, on social media as @KeplerProndress on Twitter and Instagram, or Heidi Stabbert on Facebook. You can also find me on YouTube on Captain Jack Rackham's channel every other Tuesday night, joining the DC wench Peggy Holmes and Andrea Trask on the Captain and His Wenches show.
All right, Raider Nation, there's still a couple of weeks to sign up for that special custom Raiders jersey we'll be giving away, and it doesn't cost you a thing to enter. Send us your name and address so we can send you some free Raiders swag and podcast stickers and sign you up for that jersey. Call us, tell us what you want to know, throw us an interesting nugget that we can use in one of our upcoming episodes, and become a part of what we're doing here. Remember, this is the Only Nation, and we want you to be a part of it. So call us 904-701-8667. That's 904-701-8667. Call us now and join the Only Nation podcast family. There are two easy ways to find me on social media. You can send me a tweet at T3_sports703, or you can hit me up on Facebook at Tom, THOM Jones. I want to also thank you for your continued support of the Raider Roots podcast. This week, we'll be traveling back to the year 1981.
As always, we look forward to hearing from you. Until next time, everyone, go Raiders.
We are not just a nation. We are the only nation.